What's that? Who? This? Oh, it's working. These working.
What? Do the signal. Is it on? Okay. We're good? All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Hillsborough Township Planning Board meeting of February 13th, 2025. Please join me in a salute to the flag. Please be advised this meeting has been duly advertised according to Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, otherwise known as Sunshine Law. Notice of the 2025 annual meeting schedule has been provided to the officially designated newspapers, the Township Clerk, posted on the Township's website, and available here at the Hillsborough Township Municipal Complex. In addition, application documents and plans have been made available on the Township Civic Clerk website at least 10 days of this evening's meeting. Complete application files are available in the Planning and Zoning Department for inspection according with the public meeting notice. And with that, may I have a roll call of board members and also board and township professionals, please?
Mr. Peason, Mr. Flagg, Mr. Vitale, Mr. Deb, and currently Mayor Ciccarelli are absent. Mr. Wagner?
Here.
Mr. Radowitz?
Here.
Ms. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Committeeman Lapani?
Present.
Chair Sirachi?
Here.
Mr. Coyce?
Present.
Ms. Ball?
Here.
Ms. Bernstein?
Here.
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 And myself and the videographer are here.
Okay, thank you and welcome, everyone. We have a few meeting minutes for consideration.
3 apparent.
We do have 3. That's why I said that's a few. It's all good.
The reorg.
Huh?
Yeah, the reorg,
Yep.
the regular, and the 23rd.
First up is the reorganization meeting minutes of January 9th, 2025. Assuming everyone's eligible?
Everyone's eligible.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Okay, any comments from the dais? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Mr. Radowitz?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Committeeman Lapani?
Yes.
And Chair Sirachi?
Yes. Okay, next, the regular meeting minutes of January 9th, 2025. I believe everyone.
So moved. Second.
Comments from dais? Roll call, please.
Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Mr. Radowitz?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Committeeman Lapani?
Yes.
Chair Sirachi?
Yes. And lastly, the meeting minutes of January 23rd, 2025. Who's eligible, please?
Everyone is eligible but the chair.
I wasn't here for that.
You weren't here. Yeah.
Skipped out. So moved. Second.
Comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Mr. Radowitz?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Committeeman Lapani?
Yes.
And that's it.
No, that's it. Now I remember where I was, but, okay. Next up, consideration of resolutions. We have one this evening, Western Road LLC, Gostella, file number 22-PB-03-MSPV.
Eligible members, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Wagner, Mr. Radowitz, Ms. Smith, Committeeman Lapani, and yourself.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Mr. Radowitz?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Committeeman Lapani?
Yes.
Chair Sirachi?
Yes. Okay, we do have planning board business. It's fourth round fair share affordable housing obligation. I believe we're going to be discussing the township committee's resolution, and this is for informational only.
What it is, for information, it's a heads up for, mine's on. It's a heads up for what's to come, because the next piece of the puzzle is the housing element fair share plan that you're all going to have to adopt in the spring. But this to give you an idea of what we submitted to the court, to the program, as to what we believe our proposed number is, subject to further review during the housing element process. If Mr. Coyce would like to add anything, he's more than welcome.
Just that the adoption of the Housing and Fair Share Plan has a deadline of June 30th, I believe, 2025.
Yes, June 30th, and it will require the endorsement also of the governing body prior to June 30th, so.
So just from a logistical standpoint, we just, in terms of identifying the meeting that it would have to be, and also with the Township Committee, we'll do that coordination.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from the dais?
More to come.
Yes. Do we have to take an official action, or
No.
nothing at this time?
Not at this time.
All right. Thank you for the heads up. Okay, we do not have consideration of ordinances, so I will go to business from the floor for items not on this evening's agenda. If you'd like to address the board, provide any comments, feel free to come up, state your name and address for the record.
5 minutes,
Yep, 5
Yeah.
minutes.
nothing involving.
Yes, okay, I'll go to, yeah. And no comments directly or indirectly involving warehouses.
Stop me if I can't ask what I'm going to ask, okay? Rich Garman, Winding Way, Hillsborough. When an application comes to fruition and we're going to take a vote, what are the choices? Is it just deny, approve? Is it approve with conditions, deny with conditions? What are the options?
It's approved with conditions, agreements that were made during the hearings, and denial is a straight-up denial.
All right?
Okay.
When an applicant is denied or approved and it ends up in court, does the public get involved in that at all or have a say at those hearings?
That's a good question. Is it-
If you feel the desperate necessity to come out to Flemington, you're more than welcome, but that's where they're being held. And it's open to the public, but in terms of participation, no.
Okay, thank you.
And let the record reflect, the mayor has joined us at 7:13. Welcome, Mayor. Any other comments from the public or from the floor? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go to this evening's public hearing. And applicant, and I guess we can start with objector number one. All right, well,
Mr. Chairman,
Oh,
I
yeah.
need to continue my recusal, so I appreciate being here this evening and wish everyone a lovely evening.
okay, thank you for joining us.
Let the record also reflect that Mr. Smith is going to sit up on the dais, but he is not going to participate, and he is not eligible to take action regarding this application. So it is the mayor, the committeeman, the chair, the secretary, and Mr. Wagner are the remaining members of the board to hear this application, the Fab
Okay.
Five.
Okay.
I would also point out from a logistic point of view, Mr. Chairman, that I have asked for an executive session this evening regarding a prior application before the board that I have gotten direction from Judge Menon and need to spend some time with the members of the board who were involved in that application in order to get direction on going forward in conjunction with counsel for the carrier. So
Okay.
that will probably be around 9:30-ish.
All right, thank you. So up this evening is Homestead Road LLC, file number 21-PB-25-MS/MSPV. Time of decision, March 1st of this year, and lots of long notes. When are we carrying this since? Okay. Yep, the application is continued from the December 12th, 2024 without further notice. I will ask, representatives for the applicant to introduce themselves, and all the objectors are here this evening.
Yes, good evening, Chairman, members of the board. Craig Genetti, the law firm Dave Pitney, on behalf of the applicant, Homestead Road, LLC.
Thank you.
Good evening. Mike Pissarro, Policy Director for the Watershed Institute, also known as Objector Number 1.
Scott Gross, objector number 2. Brian Tarantino, representing SWAT, objector number 3.
John Lanahan, objector number 4.
Lori Cleveland, representing the Sauerland Conservancy.
Well, Welcome, everyone.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, there are some housekeeping issues that we need to address before we move on to the application. I'm going to take one recommendation piece first and deal with an issue that Mr. Giannetti and I have been going back and forth on from a technical point of view the last day, and then the board can address the second piece of Mr. Tarantino's issue, which is the famous model. Mr. Tarantino, on behalf of SWAT, submitted a letter to this board dated January the 28th, 2025, regarding three items. One was the model issue we will discuss in a minute. Another is the proposed updated testimony of Ms. Osh. And the third is the issue regarding the applicant's standing. Let me take it in reverse order. The board has already ruled on applicant standing, at least in terms of allowing the application to go forward. If Mr. Tarantino would like to raise that issue in his summation, he's more than welcome to, but the board is continuing to move the application along, separate and apart from whatever that underlying issue that we have discussed previously is. Secondly, at the end of the December 12th meeting, and there is nothing like sitting in a hospital to sit and read this, the board has ruled on Ms. Osh's testimony previously. It is my review of the document received from Mr. Tarantino. The board is also in possession of Mr. Giannetti's February 11th, 2025 correspondence. I will obviously leave it to the board to make the ultimate decision, but I do not see anything in there that is any different than the board's action already taken at the December 12th meeting, which is to prohibit the testimony in question. There is no indication the individual has become an expert over the last month and a half on any subject that is testifiable to in terms of, and since she is represented by the objector, by being a representative of the objector, she has given her rights as a fact witness to that of the objector. So unless the board wants to take a different tack than it took in December, then we are left down to the issue of the model.
And just for sake of clarity, the reason that I submitted the contract for sale was I was reviewing some of the old transcripts, and it was, part of something you said during an early meeting that said if, the objectors want to enter evidence related to that issue. So I thought I wanted to make sure that you guys had that.
And I believe it was entered into evidence at some point along the way. I don't know whether it came from one of the objectors or it came from Mr. Brook, but it didn't come from Mr. Giannetti, that I can tell you. It is in the record, and to the extent it is an argument that you all wish to make at the appropriate time, you may so do so, but the application is going forward. So unless the board's Ms. Osh's situation is different, we're down Mr. Tarantino to the model. You want to put whatever statement you want on the record, so can Mr. Giannetti, and then the board can decide what it wants to do.
Yeah, just by the way, the pronunciation is Miss Oxy.
Oxy, sorry. I apologize for the pronunciation.
So, as instructed at the December meeting, I submitted a report that describes the model, since it's a physical object. The replica. It is not a model as a a mathematical model you would have, like for modeling ozone or air pollution or something like that. It is simply a 3D replica of the buildings, and it's relevant because it helps to demonstrate the relative size of the buildings, which speaks to the TECD size and scale appropriate for the district and the concept of transition. So it's one thing to look at numbers, it's another thing to see an actual model. So we feel it's appropriate a piece of evidence and important to enter. I believe that the report was thorough in explaining how it was developed and the accuracy of it. I'd love the opportunity to present it.
I again renew my objection to it for the reasons outlined in my letter and stated last time. Initially, at the last hearing, I requested to see the model. We still have not seen the model. We've seen pieces of models that he's taken pictures of, but we have not seen what this model is. According to his report, Mr. Tarantino was the replica designer, and another individual was the replica builder. As far as I can see, he didn't show any experience in building models or creating these models, relying on Google Earth measurements to determine the size of the building. They didn't talk about how height of the building was determined. And with respect to the purpose of what he wants to offer it for, it's frankly irrelevant. I mean, if he wants to say our buildings are bigger than the homes in some other buildings on the other side of Homestead Road, well, can see that. I mean, there's no, just looking at a picture, it's clear. But when he wants to get into intensity of development, his own planner testified, intensity of development is not just the size of the building, it's also controlled by coverage, building coverage, floor area ratio in relation to the lot. So unless this is a full-scale model of the entire area that we're talking about land-wise to show what these buildings look like on that land, it's not going to show you anything about intensity of development, right? A 3,000 square foot house on a half-acre lot is way more intense than a 6,000 square foot house on a 10-acre lot. So just showing his claimed kind of replica of the buildings and what they look like will stipulate our buildings are bigger than the homes behind us and the two buildings they identified in the report. But to say it's a model that demonstrates intensity of development is not appropriate because that's not what it's
Objection,
showing.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that it was a model. I didn't say it was a model, and I didn't say it was intended to demonstrate the intensity of the development. I said it is a 3D replica, scale replica, that demonstrates the relative size, in a physical way, shows the relative size of the buildings. And I know we all want to see the model, so I'm happy to bring it out and put it into evidence. That's what I've been trying to do. Whether there's a party that believes that it's not relevant, I don't know. I think that it's extremely relevant because the relative size is hard to fathom from just looking at a set of numbers. Not all of us are engineers. So, but seeing a physical replica is powerful. And it's a piece of evidence that, that I think is important to enter.
Again, he was saying it was with respect to the purpose of the zone. And they talked about it with their planner, and they raised it at the last time about the purpose. And they were referring to it saying providing a traditional employment generating development between the high-intensity light industrial and corporate development districts and the existing nearby residential development. And that's what he even said it was for. So yes, intensity is what he's trying to show it for.
I'm sorry, the letter that I sent on January 29th says
I'm saying what you just said right now.
what I said the purpose of the model is to demonstrate, to illustrate the phrase in the TECD that all uses shall be provided at a scale and size that is appropriate for the district. In addition, the district is called a transitional, it's a transition between light industrial and residential. And transition includes many things, but it certainly includes size and scale. And so the replica is intended to demonstrate that the appropriateness or inappropriateness of that transition.
Again, I renewed my objection. It's not appropriate. It's misleading as to what they're trying to use it for. And I'm not even sure how they're going to use it. They're going to show you a replica, but they don't have a witness to testify about it. other than Mr. Tarantino saying he prepared it because he's a replica designer, or replica designer. So I object to it being used.
Discussion?
Mr. Tarantino, in the presentation of the models, are they set on any type of landscape or indication of juxtaposition on the property, or is it just building A next to building B?
Building A next to Building B. The intent was not to show the full, landscape and the extent of, the distances between the buildings. The intent was to demonstrate the relative sizes.
And to kind of short-circuit it, I'll stipulate that our buildings are a lot
Great.
bigger.
So let-
If he'll stipulate.
What's the problem with
if-
bringing it
Let
out?
me finish.
If you're going to stipulate,
Let me finish.
Let him finish.
I'll stipulate that our buildings are a lot bigger if they'll stipulate our properties are a lot larger.
Of course, I mean, there's acreages, that's not the point. The point isn't, the point that I'm making is not the things that Mr. Giannetti is bringing up. I'm not talking about intensity, that would be a different demonstration. I'm not talking about the impervious coverage.
How long is the presentation? Is it just basically, here are
Showing
the
you
buildings
the-
and we're done?
Yes,
Are we going to, like, 5 minutes and we're out?
5 minutes and we're going to be done. We're talking about it longer than it will take.
Okay. I would say it, I would allow it, just as long as we don't dwell on it too long, just show the models and move on to other things.
I want to point out that I think 2 years ago, Mr. Giannetti, the applicant, or I'm sorry, the opposition or the residents requested some type of 3D version of what these were going to look like, which would include a 3D rendering on the site, of flyover. There's technology that this can be done. And what we got was a side view of what the elevation was going to look like. It did not fulfill what I thought the intent was. On the other hand, I don't really see if it's not on a plot, I think it would be much more impactful if it was. So side by side, I don't know what, unless there's a surprise here, I don't know what you would be afraid of. So, I mean, it's kind of a both. I think that's what we were looking for 2 years ago, and we never got. I try and picture it when I drive by on the bypass, and I just can't. So, that's just my thought on. I don't see why seeing it would be harmful, but kind of wishing it was on a full-scale site, a full-scale layout of the site. So,
Mr. Chairman, I certainly respect my colleagues' opinions. I don't see any use to look at it. It's not to scale. It doesn't give the whole picture other than two buildings. I think we've discussed it, in detail. I say Mr. Tarantino brought it to our attention. That's fine. I'm not in favor of bringing it into evidence. I think we just need to move forward. Thank you.
I have to admit, I tend to agree with John. I'm sorry. I tend to agree with the mayor and Mr. Lepani that it's not going to do any harm to look at it. I think we all have a general idea of the scale of the building anyway. I don't think it's going to influence us negatively or positively either way. I think it's just going to be what it is. It just shows, kind of, I understand what Mr. Tarantino's saying. It's showing the juxtaposition of the two buildings that are going to be, and the difference in sizes. So I don't see any harm in it. But then I'm not an attorney.
Nor am I.
That's right. Okay. Well, it looks like the majority of the board, so I don't need to add anything to it, so please bring it up.
We'll note Mr. Giannetti's objection
Yes.
for the record. Starting now.
You could be the keeper of the clock.
Okay.
We need the big clock again.
So first of all I'll do is I'll show you the report described how I picked these buildings.
Can you use the front table here to put the bill?
I'll put them there. Okay. Yeah, do you mind? So the report that I submitted describes how we picked these buildings, that they were closest to, and frankly, if, there was some argument about which ones we picked, the other industrial buildings are similar to these, similar in size. So this is 239 Homestead at 55,700 square feet. This is 219 Homestead at 32,800 square feet. And this is Lutsky Contracting, which I think is just next to there, at 10,800 square feet, okay? So this is about the size, when we talk about transition from light industrial to residential, you would expect something in between.
Objection. All he's supposed to be doing is showing the model,
show the models.
describing
All right.
how he created the buildings.
And what's the scale that you use, Mr. Tarantino?
The scale is, let me just make sure I get it right. 1 inch equals 14.3 feet. These four,
Mr. Bernstein, can I voir dire him before he starts talking about the model?
I guess.
Mr. Tarantino, in your report, you, I guess with respect to question 2, you have a chart that has the width, the length, the footprint of the buildings, and then you identify height. With respect to the Lutsky Contracting 209 Homestead Road, you identified 15 feet. Did you actually go out and measure the height of
Yes.
the building?
Mhm.
How did you measure the height of the building?
With a remote.
So you went on the property and...
No, I was
me-
able to do it without going on the property. What's the relevance of your question?
How is the model accurate if we don't know what exact height of the building is?
I measured the exact height of the
No,
building.
all right, so how did you measure it? Because did you go on the property and measure the height of the building?
No, I did
No,
not
all
go
right.
on the
Well,
property.
So you didn't go on the property. Do you know how far set back from the road the Lutsky building is? It's pretty far.
No, let's keep, how far is it?
I'm asking you.
You seem to think it's far.
All right, moving on.
Yeah, so.
Well, no,
these-
I don't, we're trying to do this in 5 minutes. Let's get to points of questions versus the banter back and forth. Let's.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Every
If
other
I could-
building. Every
if
other
I could be
building.
finished-
No,
if
no,
I could
I'm
be
allowed
finished-
to ask you these questions.
If I could
No.
finish presenting as I've been instructed.
No.
And then you can ask, then you could essentially cross-examine and ask me questions.
I'm allowed to voir dire
That's-
you about the model you're about to show.
Yeah, that's fine.
So
Let's-
that's what I'm about to do.
How about, Mr. Chairman, I would
Mm-hmm.
request that I get to finish presenting the model and then he can ask questions.
Assemble the model.
Yeah.
Look at, everyone's going to get their questions.
Yeah, so these 4 buildings represent nearby residences, and the addresses that are in the report, the Pinter House, and then three houses near Winding Way. Of course, I could have picked others, but they're very close to that size.
I thought we were just looking at the 2 buildings, and now we have
Well, he's comparing them.
another building and houses that are being introduced. And now obviously more stuff in the bag that's coming up, so. Yes, I said I thought we were just looking at the 2 buildings, and now we have another building, houses, and God knows what this is.
So this is Building 2, the proposed warehouse Building 2, which is 168,000 square feet. This is Building 1, 369,000 square feet. So we're demonstrating, the purpose of the model is to demonstrate that there is
Objection.
an
Objection.
inappropriate if I
Objection.
could finish.
But you can't testify to about it. You're not an expert.
I
All you
most certainly-
indicated was this is what you prepared and you want to show them the model. You can't testify what it shows and what it means.
Are those accurate depictions of the sizes of the buildings in your opinion?
Yes.
Thank you. That's fine. Anything, Mr. Giannetti?
Okay, so we established, well, you claim to have measured the height of the Lutsky contracting building without going onto the property. The Hillsborough Business Center, you identified as 30 feet. And YBC 239 Homestead Road, you identified as 30 feet. Did you actually go on the properties and measure the height of the building?
I don't see the relevance of your question.
Mr. Tarantino, let me make this exceedingly clear, if I haven't over the last 15 hearings. You don't get to object to questions people ask you.
Okay.
It's a yes or no, an
No, I did
answer
not go
them.
on the properties. They were estimated from the curb.
So, exactly. So these models are showing you nothing because they're not based on real life.
Okay.
Do you have other
Noted.
questions?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You guys want to, I'm sorry.
Is this entered as an exhibit? Because we're going to have to.
Yeah, so.
What is it?
I'm objecting to being entered as an exhibit.
Okay.
If he can't establish the heights of the building because he said he hasn't gone there and measured it, he just eyed it from the curb.
I didn't say
Cannot
I
be
eyed it
used.
from the curb. I said I measured it. And I got the heights of your buildings from the drawings.
I'm not talking
And the
about our
residential buildings, I was able to go on the properties to measure the heights.
Mark the buildings as objector, whichever the next one is, that Mr. Tarantino testified to. He took the actual measurements and/or used the measurements provided by the applicant for the proposed building. Any other buildings? No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can we
Which
move those?
number is it, Michael?
019.
Thank you.
Mr.
019 is the depictions of the proposed applicant's buildings. And Mr. Coyce will do us all a favor and mark them.
Well, I just want to be clear then. So Pinter House, 201 Homestead Road, you identified at 15 feet. You went on the property and measured that height?
No, I was able to do that from the street.
Can we knock that one out as well?
You want to
I mean, if
inquire,
he-
do you want to inquire how he did it from the street?
How did you measure it from the street? Mr. Tarantino?
It was a remote measuring device.
A remote measured device, is that the technical term? What did you use to measure the height?
There was an electronic.
Can you use the microphone, please? Because
There's an electronic device that allows you to measure distances, from one point to another point.
You don't know the name of this electronic device?
No.
Do you know what the
I don't
degree of
have it.
accuracy is of
I
this
don't.
electronic
The
device?
degree of accuracy is well within.
In your
is well
opinion, right?
within-
In your opinion.
Well, I was the one
You're
that
not an
designed
expert,
them. I designed the model. I'm expert enough to
Is it
design.
Chair,
the
this
model.
is the problem when we have someone that's not an
Right.
expert trying to be an
Let
expert,
me-
and someone that's not an attorney trying to be an
Right,
attorney.
let me, can you provide the model number and manufacturer of the measuring device?
Sure,
Okay. And please provide specifications.
sure.
You're curious how how he measured it, so we're going to find out.
The two buildings that are being marked 019,
Right.
the two, because they are based on the dimensions provided by the applicant.
How about the three residents? Because Mr.
Three
Tarantino
residents?
testified that
which-
he went on the properties to
Well,
measure
Pinter
those
House, he
heights.
said he didn't. 201 Homestead
No.
Road.
no, the three
The
residents.
three
on-
residences
So
on
53
Winding Way.
Winding Way, 51 Winding Way, 52 Winding Way.
Yep.
Are you, Mr. Tarantino, is your testimony you went on each of those properties and measured the height of the building? And how did you measure the height of the building? How did you measure the height of those homes?
Yeah, with the same measuring device.
And how far were you from the homes when you measured it?
I was right next to them on the property.
And each one was exactly 25 feet.
The measurements are within the tolerances that are described.
Objection.
I'm answering your question.
But you're not
The
an
me-
expert. You can't be
The measurements
testifying
are within the tolerances that the models were built on, and that's described in my report.
So let's say this, are the square footages accurate to taking out the height of the buildings?
The square footage does not
Right.
take into account the
Right,
heights.
it's all about height. So if we disregard the heights and just take them as square footage, would you be all right with that? Just the size of the, physically size of the buildings?
How do you do that looking at a 3D model that has a height?
He's concentrating on the footprint, which I think is the more important aspect of this. If you want, he's trying to denote the differences in the footprints of the buildings. The height, while it's not immaterial,
They're within,
it's still it's still the footprint that he's trying to show the impact of.
the height is based on the height that's allowable by the ordinance, so. I just-
Correct, right.
You know what that
So it's
is.
the footprint that has the impact on the neighborhood, is what he's saying.
So height doesn't have any impact on the neighborhood, is that?
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying he's focusing on the footprint that these buildings take up on the land.
Yes,
He's not focusing on the height, because as Mr. Lepani said, the height is dictated by the town.
Well, again, to my point then, if it's being used to its impact on the property because of the size, well, then we should have the building coverage for each one of these properties as well.
He's also just, what he's trying to impart to us, I think, is the fact that he's bringing up that this is a transition zone. So that is what his argument is. I'm just saying that's what his argument is. Whether we agree with it or not is a different thing. This is just what his argument is.
Thank you, Mr.
Chairman,
Smith.
I really don't want to get involved in this. My suggestion is we mark the two buildings. We mark the houses because they seemingly depict housing in the neighborhood, and we move on. The four houses are all 019. Mark them all 019.
Doesn't make difference to me.
I'm trying to move this along before I die.
And I would ask just by tomorrow, he email the board and myself with the device information that he said he used.
Yep, sure.
4 o'clock tomorrow, Mr. Tarantino.
Sure.
Send it to Ms. Paget, copy Mr. Coyce, will distribute. There's hope for you, David.
These are not being accepted, correct?
And they're not being accepted because of the heights.
You didn't measure them.
Again, Mr. Mayhew.
If I may, Mr. Tarantino, you mentioned you used electronic device to measure the heights. Did you measure a known height with that same device to determine the accuracy of that device?
I didn't do that, but that is how the device is calibrated, and that's why that's why you can make these measurements. It's a pretty standard real estate agent device to measure, rooms and buildings and things like that. But that's exactly how it works. It's calibrated based on a known distance, and then you can, make other measurements.
I understand. I was just hoping that maybe you took a measurement with the device on a structure that you knew the height, and that would help correlate or check the accuracy. And that didn't occur before or after some of your measurements?
I'm sorry to say it did not, because I was relying on the manufacturer's.
Would it be inappropriate to provide that as part of your information tomorrow?
Happy to do that.
It would be helpful, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, to provide evidence of calibration.
Sure.
Thank you.
I mean, I would ask that the industrial buildings also be entered as evidence they were measured in the same fashion.
I think we just take those and move on, okay?
Okay.
Your past testimony would always question the results of engineering and testing without having adequate backup, and you are supplying it without adequate backup. So I would move on.
Put it to the side. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So that completes SWAT's presentation.
Giannetti?
So we do have rebuttal.
Well, before you get to that, just for the record, if you recall at the last meeting, there was a discussion about Objector 2 submitting an additional expert. Mr. Gross, I will ask to confirm on the record, has submitted a letter to the board indicating that they do not wish to pursue that Mr. Play, and therefore they will not be submitting any other expert testimony on.
Scott
Correct,
Gross,
Mr.
Objector 2. Mr. Bernstein, I agree with that. We will not be presenting Mr. Plah's testimony. He's not able to present as an expert witness on the topic previously discussed.
Do any of the other objectors have any expert testimony to present? Which should be Objector 4 and 5?
No.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Giannetti, I apologize, but I figured let's at least keep the record.
Sure, I'm sure someone would have jumped up if they had another witness ready to go. So we do have 2 rebuttal witnesses to call. We have our civil engineer here this evening to provide rebuttal testimony. Our traffic engineer had a conflict and couldn't be here this evening, but given how things have gone, the odds of getting through one witness is probably slim anyway.
According to a rumor I heard, this is going to go on for a little while longer anyway. That I heard in open court this week, so let's put it that way. From your office.
Yep. So, sorry, I just don't want to knock this over.
You got enough room for Mr. Ford?
I guess we talked about, and I know we emailed about it, I guess just to clarify on kind of exhibits and what gets
I will
marked.
get from Mr. Lombardozzi the last applicant exhibit number, and we will mark, you and I will work out the markings of those. We're not marking these 3 state or DRCC because we don't normally mark them. They're just in because they're not your client's documents. They're simply an action of the state or the DRCC.
So like the DEP permits and that.
The DEP permit, the watershed, the DRCC report is generally put into the record without a designation of exhibit. We will work on the other issue. If there still is an issue, we'll address it in March.
Okay.
You can tell them when
And I
I
guess-
vote tonight.
2, before we start our rebuttal testimony, I kind of want to be clear because there's been so many hearings and listening to some of the objector testimony and on traffic and referring back to our architect's testimony from a while ago. With respect to the uses, and recall we had an operations exhibit that we presented that, basically identified it as an S1, S2 storage building under the building code. We want to be clear, this will not be a parcel delivery hub as referenced in the ITE manual that had its own separate trips. This will not be a sort fulfillment center, which means individuals sorting goods and within the warehouse for delivery as opposed to a non-sort, which is more robotic and mechanical. Because a sort fulfillment center requires a significant amount of more employee parking than what we're providing. So this will not be a sort fulfillment center. And this won't be a transload warehouse, with a transload warehouse being used for transfer of goods, not storage of goods, but the transfer of goods from one mode of transportation or one truck to another, where it comes off of one truck, goes into the warehouse, gets moved around, and gets placed on either another truck or a van or something else, where it's not actually taken off and stored on the property. And as our architect testified, typically those type of buildings are narrow and cross-docked, which our buildings are not narrow and they're not cross-docked. So I just wanted it clear on the record, and it can be in any resolution, that it would not be any of those three types of facilities.
Counselor, can I just ask a question? What would it be used for? You've identified what it's not going to be.
Well, so again, the
But
other.
what other options?
So, in basically all those three things are from the ITE manual. So we're referring off of that. So there's general warehouse, which is just storage of goods, materials, or otherwise. It could be a non-sort fulfillment center, where it's more robotics inside as opposed to individuals hand packing and stuffing things. It's kind of, and as you can see, I'm sure through all the testimony, there's kind of broad categories depending upon the business, but in generally, it's the same type of operation with respect to the storage of materials. The parcel delivery hub is a way different type of operation, even though it's under the warehouse categories in ITE, but it generates a lot of traffic, and we're making clear we're not going to be a parcel delivery hub like your UPS or your fulfillment center or a FedEx or DHL type facility. So, we heard a lot of these type of uses during some of the objection testimony, and we just wanted to be clear what we're not. Now, warehouse is still, a sort or non-sort fulfillment center is still, broad. There's a lot of businesses that can fall into that category. But we just wanted to be clear as to those three items that it will not be.
So I'm not a warehouse specialist, and I'm asking these questions to try to clear in my mind. So we've identified it's not going to be a sorting hub, it's not going to be this. So I'm trying to kind of figure what you would do with a warehouse. So a truck would come in, take something off, put it in this warehouse, and somebody else would move it. But what would that be? I mean, what type of product or service? I'm trying to get a handle around. You got to give me something to go on, because I'm trying to envision. I know what it's not going to be, and I understand that. So in my view, what the hell else could you use it for? And I don't mean to be disrespectful in answering that question, but I don't know if other people up here have that question, but I do, and I need to understand what you would use it for. And I know you haven't identified a vendor or somebody that's going to buy the warehouse, and I know we've been up here for 3 years, so I don't know if your client, maybe in those 3 years, hasn't talked to anybody, or there must be some idea of what we're going to be using this for.
So unless the operation is, buying the property to use it for their facility, warehouse facility, where it's leased, it's almost no different than apartment leasing versus buying a house, right? When you buy a house, you're doing it months in advance, planning ahead of time. Then you sign a contract and you probably don't close for another, 90 to 120 days. But when you're leasing an apartment, that happens within a week or 2 weeks, right? The tenant wants to move in right away. They don't want to wait 6 months to whatever to see whether or not they're going to be able to rent the place. Well, it's no different than with these facilities.
I mean, can I object? I'd like to object to this. Mr. Giannetti is testifying. He's not a warehouse expert. If he wants to, if he wants to bring a rebuttal testimony.
Mr. Tarantino,
I'm just trying to get an idea.
Mr. Wagner has asked a question. Mr. Giannetti is trying to answer it. Mr. Giannetti and his client will live and die by whatever that answer is, which may or may not be helpful. It's up to him.
Okay.
So I'm just.
And also, too, our architect testified to a lot of this as well, as a different type of facilities and how it works.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I apologize, Mr. Wagner. You submitted way back sometime when I still did not have gray hair, a list of possible tenants. Is that correct?
Tenants in the sense of what could be stored in the building, as an S1, S2.
Has anything changed from that list?
No, still the same.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
may I provide clarification as my understanding what was submitted?
please
And
do.
by all means, Mr. Giannetti can confirm or verify what I'm saying. My understanding is the document that was provided listed of all the types of materials that could possibly be stored, and it has to do with the classification system that the building department used, the Uniform Construction Code, in terms of how it distinguishes the differences between the different types of storage. And they provided a list of all the types of materials that are listed in the different categories. I can't go into detail the differences between them, but my understanding is that that was one of the documents that was provided.
Correct. Yeah, it's,
And the document also
A7.
was qualified by saying may include but not limited to this list. So it was not a limiting, the document did not limit what it could be. It just said it could include those, but could be anything.
Mr. Chairman?
See, again, misrepresenting what's in the document. I'm reading it right
Mr.
here.
Chairman.
It says proposed S2 uses include storage of the following.
I'll, without boring everyone, I'll restate what I just stated. Applicant submitted, we've had discussions about it. Board professionals will be giving advice to the client at some point at the end of this. Mr. Giannetti and his client will live and die by whatever they submit regarding this issue.
Prefer to live, but
So I appreciate that. I guess, as a consumer, which we all are, so, an example, if I may. So when I order tires for my vehicles, I order them from Tire Rack, and they're in Delaware, and they have a warehouse, and they send the tires, and they come UPS, and they deliver them to me. Is that something that I can visualize that this warehouse a tenant might use that for? I understand the packaging piece, so the Amazon piece I get, because they come in little packages and UPS. I know that's not what you're suggesting. Is it something like a Chewy, like when I order dog food, it comes in a bag? Would that be a potential use for this warehouse, or?
it could be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, we're all.
Dogs and tires.
I like dogs and tires. Not so much the cat. But no, I'm just trying
Yeah, I mean,
to.
and think about it, though, and
Yeah.
if you look at our A7 exhibit, we talk about the type of thing, beverages, cement and
Okay.
bags, chalk and crayons, empty cans, food products, frozen foods, glass, like, there's a whole lot of
Okay.
businesses that could use that type of operation in
Okay.
in the e-commerce, that's
Yeah.
what you're seeing.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to answer. It's like, when you
I
get an office
understand.
building approved, right? You don't know who the tenants are
Yeah.
when you're getting an office building approved.
Yeah, I was just
And there
trying
could be a
to,
whole slew of businesses going in that office
I was
building.
just trying to get an idea of what type of products would come, because you said you're not going to store things there. I mean, what is the,
No, we will store things.
you will store
Yeah,
things?
the transload doesn't
Okay,
store.
maybe- all right, so I
It
understand.
basically
Goes
comes
from one
off
to the other.
and it gets put on and it's almost slid across the building to another vehicle.
Okay, so possibly my tires and dog food, possibly.
Correct. Possibly tires and dog food.
Thank you, no cat food, sorry.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
if I may, I just want to caution the board to be aware that the list that was provided, A7, again, it lists all the things that can possibly be stored. The Uniform Construction Code, the way it uses the terminology of use groups, it's different from a zoning standpoint. The use groups just mean in terms of how within the walls of the building, how the building is allowed to be designed for the materials or the use that's going to be functioning inside of there. The building code doesn't have a warehouse use group. They classify it as an S, storage, and then they have the different classifications of all the materials that go in them. I just want to caution the board to understand that while the building code regulates the different types of things that can be stored, perhaps what Mr. Giannetti is already trying to articulate, that's going deeper into the actual use, which is different, or it can be different. While you might have materials that can be stored there, how those materials are being taken off a truck, packed together, everything that he described before, that's where it starts to get into, okay, what use is actually happening here? What's the difference between the general warehousing and all the other warehousing that ITE talks about? So I just want to caution the board in that, and that something has to be looked at.
Right. I mean, when you look at this, and it's just adding to what Mr. Hoyce was saying, it's really just that it's either low or moderate hazard materials. I mean, it does say here, I do see something about inbound delivery of bulk items that will be sorted and prepared for regional distribution. So, it will be a fulfillment of sorts, possibly. It may be robotics, because I think that's what Mr. Giannetti said, not human, but, so.
So there's nothing further from me. I'd like to call or recall Mr. Michael Ford.
Swear him in.
And though I refer to Mr. Ford as rebuttal, he's also going to be, testifying to revised plans that were submitted November 2024, and at least the changes. David, can we get the HDMI? Do you want to switch seats?
Yeah, they didn't get any.
You want on the closer side of the table?
Thank you.
I want a tire and I want some dog food. Thank you, Mr. Rapani.
There we go.
Great.
So am I good to go?
Yes. Yeah. Good? Yes, I do. Yes, Michael Ford, F-O-R-D, with Van Cleef Engineering Associates here in Hillsborough, licensed planner and engineer in New Jersey.
Yeah, there you go. You want a green.
Okay, better?
Better.
All right. And the exhibit that I have up is a site exhibit dated November 20th, 2024. It's a color.
Let's mark it.
Yep.
I believe we're up to A13.
It's a colorized version, updated colorized version of the proposed project.
And this is based upon the revised plans that were submitted to the board, I guess both sets in August of 2024 and November of 2024.
That's correct.
So maybe using what's been marked as Exhibit A13, if you can just discuss some of the plan changes from the last site plan you presented many moons ago.
Okay. The plan changes that have taken place are not going to have been, I'll say, with so much detail for small elements of the project, that on this overall color exhibit, and perhaps the easiest way to understand it is to describe what hasn't changed. The buildings haven't changed, the parking hasn't changed, the driveways haven't changed. The only substantive area of impervious coverage has changed is a trailer parking area behind building number 2, which backs up onto Conrail, and I'll highlight it on the exhibit now with the cursor. It's in this area.
Were you able to zoom in at all?
Yes. There was a second row of trailer parking, 33 spaces that was removed from that area. Is this? So you'll see there was a second row of trailer parking spaces and a retaining wall along the westerly property line that's been removed. So now there is no longer a retaining wall proposed at that location, nor are those 33 trailer parking areas are proposed. The other changes that have been made to the plan have been made in response to NJDEP comments. I believe when I last appeared here in May of 2023, we had a pending or about to submit an NJDEP permit application for the freshwater wetland disturbances as part of the project, as well as the flood hazard area disturbances as part of the project. I'll report to the board, and I think it was already referenced this evening, that we have secured the NJDEP approval for the freshwater wetland delineation on the site. That was issued in January of 2024, and then in January of 20, January.
Wait, for which approval?
The freshwater wetland LOI. Oh,
Was that
May 25th, May 25th, 2023, so perhaps it was just after my last appearance. And then in October or November of 2023, that's November 6th, 2023, the NJDEP issued the flood hazard area approval, which verified the flood hazard area limits on the site. That's the floodplain most people are familiar with characterizing that limit as well as the disturbances within that regulated area, the floodplain, and it also established the riparian zone, which is part of the current DEP criteria regarding impacts to streams. What's still pending is our freshwater wetland permit application.
And that includes a general permit to fill the infamous drainage ditch we've heard so much about.
Correct. So
I guess while we're talking about the DEP approvals, in both, or in the FHA permit, did it find that we complied with the NJDEP stormwater management rules?
Yes.
And that plan they reviewed, does it have the same stormwater management design as being shown here?
Yes.
Okay, proceed.
Okay. The stormwater management review included both or all three elements of stormwater management: quantity control, quality treatment, and groundwater recharge. As part of the quantity control, there were no substantive changes to any of the three basins the board heard me describe the last time I was here. That is, there's still 3 pond-constructed wetland basins proposed as part of the application. As part of the DEP review there, what I would report is there were minutia detailed changes made to the outlet structure, controlled outlet structures, and no changes in the footprint of the basins or where the basins are located. With regards to groundwater recharge, there was a groundwater recharge facility added behind building number 1. That is a small-scale subsurface infiltration basin. There were 3 previously proposed on that site. There's a 4th one. And there are 2 subsurface infiltration or subsurface infiltration basins adjacent to building number 2, which have not changed. Although as part of the DEP review, in reviewing the soil testing that was done for all 6 of those areas, we utilized pit bale test method, which is actually give you an accurate infiltration rate of the fractured shale, which is typical of the septic system regs, and have done hundreds, if not thousands, of septics over the 35 years I've been involved in engineering, which utilizes the pit bale test. However, we proposed it as an alternate method for the 2 subsurface infiltration basins adjacent to number 2. The DEP did not want to accept that as a qualified test for those subsurface basins, so we have accounted for subsurface or the groundwater recharge by the 4 basins that are part of behind building number 1, but we haven't removed the 2 by building 2. So the end result was meeting the groundwater recharge criteria with the 4 basins, while providing opportunity for about 40% additional recharge by the 2 small-scale subsurface infiltration basins by building 2. There was talk and I think some comments regarding the drainage areas to these subsurface basins and whether it exceeded the 2.5 acre limitation. All of the calculations that were done as part of their analysis, and that would be the analysis that was on record at the time I last testified, which would have been before the objectors testified, included calculations and analysis that specifically illustrated the design did not exceed the 2.5 acres. We've, as part of the DEP review process, have added additional detail to the drainage area maps that are in the appendix of the drainage report, and that was the drainage report that was submitted to the township and dated October 16th, 2023, illustrating how the roof areas that drain to those subsurface infiltration basins don't exceed 2.5 acres. And by simple math, you could understand that the total area of building 2 with 2 subsurface infiltration basins connected to it is not over 5 acres. The building is actually those 2 basins have about 2 acres going to them, and then the 4 basins by building 1 have about an average of 2.1 acres going to them. So there's obviously an adequate facility for the subsurface infiltration basins so that they don't exceed 2.5 acres draining to them. And we have had discussions with the project architect, and while the detailed construction plans are not prepared for the buildings, obviously at this point, we have had discussions that when the detailed plans are drawn, they would have to include roof drainage areas such that those drainage area limitations to the subsurface basins are complied with, and they can do that.
I guess while we talk about stormwater reviews, in addition to the DEP reviews, we've also gotten the Delaware and Raritan Canal Commission reviews as well. And have you reviewed those?
Yes.
And I think the most recent was January 10th, 2024. Did you read that one as well?
Yes.
And in that review, did the DRCC also find that the stormwater management was designed in accordance with DEP regulations?
Yes.
You talked about some of the changes for the stormwater management system. We also talked about the removal of the trailer parking. With the removal of that trailer parking, did that any way impact or change your prior testimony on the waiver relief with respect to the 2 road crossings for the stream corridor and the Texas pipeline easement?
No.
And your prior testimony that that relief could be granted and the justifications for it remains the same?
Yes.
Do you have any more testimony with respect to changes to the plans?
Okay. Perhaps some additional detail just for the board's understanding. I've discussed the subtle changes to the detention basins. I've discussed the details regarding the subsurface infiltration basins. Regarding water quality, again, water quality has been reviewed and approved by NJDEP as part of our flood hazard area individual permit, and that is handled by porous pavement and manufactured treatment devices. I understand that there was objection about the sizing and the analysis of the mechanical treatment devices. The board should understand that these mechanical treatment devices are supplied by a vendor. They're actually sized in coordination with a vendor. Since I last appeared here, we went back to the vendor. We also went back to, or discussed how they are ultimately sized with NJDP. Additional detail was provided both in the drainage report as well as on the plans, and it illustrates compliance with those requirements for water quality to be provided by those mechanical treatment devices. But what I'd also like to point out to the board is that with any application, even past this board and at the time of construction, there may be a change in a vendor's type of supply, or we specify one mechanical treatment device from ADS, for example, and the contractor wants to provide a system supplied by Caltech. It's not exclusive, but the standards to comply with are the same. And there is a process known as a shop drawing review process, where at the time of construction, whatever the contractor is proposing to be used, they supply shop drawings to us, verifying, if you will, an or equal that is being proposed, or perhaps time is passed and a year from now, those materials are different, and there's a check and balance in place at that time where the mechanical treatment device is reviewed again and approved by not only our office, but also those materials are submitted to the Township Engineering Department for review and approval. I think there was some discussion at hearings since I last appeared regarding the proximity or the retaining walls on site. First, the proximity of the retaining wall to the Conrail, and as I've already described, by virtue of those 33 trailer parking spaces being removed, the retaining wall in that area is no longer proposed. And then with regards to retaining walls in proximity to the subsurface infiltration basins, as well as porous pavement, we have a detail on the plan that specifies a generic, if you will, modular block retaining wall. Again, similar to what I just described with regards to the manufactured treatment devices. Retaining walls could be keystone, anchor block. There could be different types of retaining walls chosen at the time of construction. Any wall that's above 4 feet requires a building permit or a construction permit. There's specific construction details that are provided by that pre-manufactured block wall, as well as structural calculations and the design of those. And that's standard operating procedure for projects where there's a retaining wall specified on a site plan, but the specifics of the construction are provided at the time of construction. And that's what we proposed here. There's a notes on the plan to that effect. And the walls are set back at a distance from the retaining walls such that they would be beyond any anticipated geogrid, if you will, that would be part of a modular block retaining wall, and would be able to be installed and function without impacting the operation of the subsurface infiltration basins nor the wall itself. Your
Oh, your battery's dying? That's fine.
So, let me just, I know there's been discussion about the compliance of the stormwater management proposal in accordance with the rules and regulations of the township and the state. And it's not, I'll say, common for me to appear before this board where we have in hand NJDEP approvals that illustrate that, nor even a report that is basically a final review by the Delaware Raritan Canal Commission that also substantiates the design is in compliance with the stormwater rules. And in this case, we have both of those aspects. As you know, the DNR, the DEP approval is a construction permit for the regulated features within the flood hazard area. That includes the two bridge crossings, the discharges from the basins, the connections to the existing sanitary trunk line that runs along the stream. And then with regards to the Delaware Raritan Canal Commission, the only outstanding items that we owe them are a detailed plan of where signs would be placed along the DNR Canal Commission stream corridor, and the county and township approvals. So they always defer or hold their final action until both the county and township have taken action.
And were you present in or heard on video or read the transcript of the testimony of the objector's engineer that testified raising issues with respect to the stormwater compliance?
Yes.
And beyond what you've already testified to, do you have any further responses to that?
Yeah, there's a letter authored August 8th, 2024 that we submitted to the board. It's on record, and it's some 10 pages. It includes the plans, drainage report, and the DNR Canal Commission report of January. Highlights some of the items. For example, there seemed to be an assertion that how could we establish a 0.5 inch per hour permeability rate for the design of an infiltration system, and I find that disingenuous to make it sound like we're picking some number out of thin air when the code requires that when you do permeability tests in fractured shale according to the Chapter 12 BMP manual, and the basin flood test is pass or fail. It doesn't give you a rate. And what the state says is when you have a passing basin flood test, you are to utilize 0.5 inches per hour for your analysis. So we've followed the state standards in that regard, and I'll say that that I think is got a conservative aspect to it, and our actual proposal proposal where we have those two additional subsurface infiltration basins to provide additional opportunities for groundwater recharge that are substantially greater than the required amount, provide for a very conservative design. What I'd also like to point out is that the objector's testimony failed to recognize that the analysis for this project was done with the current rainfall data. That is, when we submitted this application, and by virtue of submitting the application at the time, as well as when we submitted our DEP application in advance of the changes in the DEP stormwater rules in, I believe it was July of 2023, we didn't have to comply with the new rainfall data. But even before making that submittal to DEP, not because DEP suggested it, we used the new rainfall data, that is, the current adjusted and the future rainfall data. And for the 100-year storm, for example, the future rainfall data is about 50% greater than the design standards that really would apply to this project. So again, the project is, I think it would be disingenuous to say that it's not a conservative design when you apply the regs that would apply to this project. And we're not trying to pull back that design and not provide a conservative analysis using the new rainfall data. We acknowledged, the concerns statewide, locally, with regards to stormwater management, and the applicant acquiesced to our suggestion to provide a more conservative design, and that's utilizing that new rainfall data. And keep in mind, everybody here has been at this for a while. It's not like at day one when we submitted this, we had an option of using that new rainfall data at the time of the submittal, and it wasn't really until 2023, I'll say spring of 2023, and officially in July of 2023, when that new rainfall data was available. But there was always already talk of what that new rainfall data would be in the summer of 2022, and we were already making those changes to the plan to update the analysis and the design to accommodate that new rainfall data and provide for a conservative design, and we did. Yet, in any of the testimony by the objector or the written documents by the objector's engineer, I don't recall seeing anything in there that acknowledged that the rainfall data used in this analysis is substantially greater than what is required by virtue of when it was submitted both to the township and to NJDEP.
With respect, anything else on stormwater management or rebutting that testimony on stormwater management?
I could talk for a while about it.
That's okay.
I was going to start talking about soil testing, but we've done all the soil testing in accordance with the NJDEP Chapter 12 BMP manual. These are linear BMPs that dictate how many tests are done. We did them. We're not on this project encountering any soils where we're looking at reclassifying like you've heard on other projects. The groundwater recharge is provided in accordance with the regs. And like I've described a couple of times already this evening, the groundwater recharge opportunities on this project are about 40% greater than what is required. We're not taking any credit for it. Same thing with water quality. We provide for porous pavement and mechanical treatment devices, yet the pond-constructed wetlands provide for additional water quality treatment. Again, DEP doesn't allow for those types of basins now with larger drainage areas to be credited for water quality treatment, so we don't. But the board should understand that that's an added measure that's not even in as part of the analysis. And that's for an 80% TSS removal. And I understand there was some discussion about the
And that's kind of where I was going to go while we're talking about water quality. In addition, the objector's engineer, in addition to talking about stormwater management, talked about, again, this infamous drainage ditch on the property. And even some questioning of Mr. Mayhew, and I think he actually maybe even opined that that ditch is classified or is considered a stream under the town's stream corridor ordinance. Did you hear that testimony? And you also heard the testimony of our expert, Ed Cook, on the subject matter as well?
Yes.
And if you can just touch on that issue of not only whether it classifies as a stream under their ordinance or not, but also the difference in water quality between now and what's being proposed.
Okay.
Just quickly, I'm going to put a quick objection. And Mr. Giannetti, please correct me if I'm wrong, sorry. Did Mr. Ford issue any supplemental reports talking about the stream, water quality, or anything of that nature?
Yes, he did.
Okay, could you let me know when and what?
His August 8th, 2024 letter discusses it.
All right.
The feature we're talking about, and I lost the screen. It's just, oh, there it is, okay. So just
Do it all.
for clarification, this is the ditch we're referring to?
Yeah, you can zoom in maybe a little bit.
Sure.
On A
13.
13.
Is that good? All right, so the NJDP freshwater wetland verification verified that that's classified as an ordinary resource value ditch, no wetland buffer, and that's on the exhibit. If I zoom in just a little more, you could perhaps read that right here. So it's labeled as such. The pending NJDP freshwater wetland permit application is requesting to fill a portion of that ditch. The NJDP flood hazard area verification, that is verifying the limits of the flood hazard area, the floodplain.
Streams.
And the streams, correct. And the riparian zones associated with those streams did not identify this ditch feature as regulated under the flood hazard area rules. And the permit for the disturbances within those areas that they did identify on the property as regulated areas has been approved.
I guess to that point too, we have a pending general permit with the DEP, or we have a few different permits pending with the DEP, including one, if approved by the DEP, allows us to fill that ditch.
Correct, correct. And then the NJDEP Best Management Practices Manual under 9.3, grass swales, if you were to try to characterize this existing ditch of having some kind of water quality significance, my opinion, it would not qualify. If I tried to argue that it did have some water quality treatment features as part of an NJDEP application, I doubt that it would be accepted. Those standards require vegetated swales, but with grass, not with trees and an eroded channel with a fractured shale or a dirt bottom. They also
Let me, I guess, ask a question just to focus, the purpose of this testimony. So Mr. Cook, our expert, testified that as it stands today, it's his opinion that the ditch is a source of degradation to the Royce Brook, given that it's just collecting untreated drainage from that vehicle parking area and going right to the Royce Brook. And you recall that testimony?
Yes.
And then the objector's engineer disagreed with that opinion in Mr. Cook and tried to make the claim that the ditch, as it stands today, is providing some type of water treatment. Is that what you're talking about right now? What actual water treatment is being provided in that ditch?
Yes. Yeah, and then what I was just describing was the NJDEP's Best Management Practice, Chapter 9.3, regarding grass swales and what does qualify. It also, beyond it having to be a vegetated channel, it also stipulates flow rates in the channel, and my review of the existing slope of this channel exceeds 5%, so it's steep in the sense that it would not provide for an opportunity for slow flow. If you want to try to provide for water quality, not only do you need the vegetation, but you need the flow to be through that channel to be slow, and a slope of 5% is substantial. Typically, water quality swales are on the order of 1 or 2% maximum. So this is literally many times faster or higher.
In your opinion, do you feel the stormwater management design post-construction is better for water quality treatment and stormwater management to Royce Brook than what currently occurs today?
Yes. And another aspect of that grass swale, even if we were to take a position or acquiesce that it met the NJDEP standards for a water quality grass swale, the DP standards only give you 50% TSS removal credit for a grass swale. So even a swale designed and constructed in accordance with the standards, grass lined, not an abundance of trees around it where you have leaves falling into the grass swale that perhaps could clog it or shade out the grass from growing properly, which in this case, it's in a wooded area. Even if it were in strict compliance with the DEP regs, which it isn't, in my opinion, it would only be credited for 50% TSS removal, where the proposed project, I've already stated, meets the 80%, the higher level 80% TSS removal by the manufactured treatment devices, the porous pavement, and even in addition to that, there's added opportunity for water quality treatment by the water that runs through those manufactured treatment devices, and it eventually goes to those pond-constructed wetlands where additional treatment is provided that is not even quantified, and then subsequently discharged to the Royce Brook. So this is certainly, I think it would be disingenuous to think that the existing pavement that's just upstream of that swale has anywhere near an 80% TSS removal by virtue of that existing ditch.
Now, moving away from the ditch and stormwater management, and lastly, unless there's anything else you want to touch upon, this exhibit A13 has some dimensions that appears to show basically the nearest residences and the distance from the actual home to the building. If we can maybe walk through some of those distances and identify it.
Before we walk through, I'm wondering if we can take a brief recess.
It's,
You want to go?
yeah, it's just going to walk through these three
Real
things,
quick?
and then that's
Okay.
it.
All right.
Okay. I've zoomed in to the rear of building number 1. This is the northeast corner, where you can see the dimensions from the building to the closest dwellings, and I'm highlighting it now, over 500 feet to the dwelling at the end of Winding Way cul-de-sac.
And that's 514 feet?
514 feet. The next building on the west side of Winding Way
and our next closest neighbor at in that area, the dwelling is 608.8 feet, and this is from survey data to the proposed building. And then I'll have to zoom out a little bit to see this. Again, still at building 1, the closest neighbor on White Meadow Road, and I'm highlighting the building or the existing residence at the top of the page, is 1,083 feet from the building number 1. And then I'll go to building number 2. Again, building number 2 and the closest residence on Winding Way, it's 976 feet to building number 2. And this exhibit also shows other dimensions from the buildings to the property line, those existing buildings to the property line. Is that, yep, okay.
Anything else you have? Yeah. That's all. I have a direct presentation of this witness.
Okay, thank you. So we'll take a 10-minute recess. Say we reconvene about 10 of, according to the back clock.
No.
Peter Frampton? Well, we're 60s.
Yeah, I know, well, that would be about right.
So, but I'm in my 60s.
Did you guys disconnect me? Hello? Hello?
There you go, it's on.
Can you hear me?
Just gotta project.
Yeah,
Bang
but
the
can you hear
gavel.
me up there?
Yeah, I can hear it.
Can you, yeah, what's that?
Yeah.
All right.
The power of the gavel.
Bang it.
Okay, we're reconvening.
The whistle.
Okay. All right, do you have to give the signal?
We're on. We're
I
ready.
guess
We're
we're
on.
on. Okay, we're back.
Chairman, I
Bless you.
apologize, and looking at my notes, there's two more questions I had for Mr. Ford before I finish with him.
And just a reminder that we do need to end at 9:30 tonight.
Oh, I was not aware of that.
I said it earlier, I have an executive session, I have to talk to them.
Okay.
Judge Menon wants me to talk to them. Couple of things before. One is from me, and I thought one was from you, Mr. Giannetti. For the purposes of the record, I have a Township of Hillsborough certification by absent board member, examination of record, eligibility to vote. Mayor Ciccarelli indicated that he has reviewed the December 12, 2024 video recording, and therefore he is eligible to participate, which I assume you would want, because without that, you don't have quorum. I'm done.
Okay. So I'll ask my two questions of Mr. Ford, and then just another comment before we go to cross-examination. Mr. Ford, first, going back to the drainage ditch, I guess, if you could provide for the board, how long have you been handling site plan applications in Hillsborough Township?
Since the early 90s, they're laughing at me.
Ballpark, how many
35 years.
applications have you handled site plan before the board?
Hundreds.
In your experience, has the board or the township on any of those matters classified a drainage ditch as a stream under their stream corridor ordinance?
I'm going to object. What the board did in a previous application, any application, is not presidential binding or in any way binding on this board in this application. It's immaterial.
That's a great argument, but he's allowed to
Or that
testify.
Mr. Ford has taken up permanent residence before the board is the only engineer who appears on behalf of applicants.
I didn't say whether they've done it.
Which though it seems that way, it did not in fact the case.
Just to be clear, my question was, in any application, I'm saying with respect to what he's worked on, has the board ever, or the town, ever classified it?
For what it's worth, which is,
Go ahead, answer the question.
Yeah, no, in fact, I think part of my testimony with last time I was here was, the standards are written so loosely that you could classify a roadside ditch as a stream, but the regs, or the town code also includes a clause that defers to NJDP, and that NJDP will govern. And in this case, I've already described NJDEP's conclusion.
And then also, too, you recall previously the board engineer review letter dated August 10th, 2023, which had some stormwater management comments. And based upon the revised plans submitted, the revised reports, and your testimony, have all those comments been addressed?
Yes, we believe they have.
That's all I have on that subject. Obviously, Mr. Mayhew can ask questions as well. And just before we get to that, I noted to Mr. Bernstein, Mr. Tarantino was never sworn in when he provided the testimony with respect to the models, if we can maybe have him come up, get sworn in, and state that all his prior testimony is the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth.
You swear that any testimony you give tonight, that you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
That's all I have, a direct presentation of Mr. Ford.
Mr. Mayhew.
Mr. Ford, you testified that you've removed a retaining wall on the western property line along the Conrail property line. Did you submit the plan to Conrail for review?
No, we have not. We're not doing any work in the Conrail right away.
How did you determine an appropriate slope or distance from the property line for the proposed improvements?
Well, right now, with the removal of the 33 trailer parking spaces, the closest trailer parking space is substantially further away from the property line, and that allowed us to do a natural grade, not in excess of a 3-to-1 slope, which is a maintainable slope without disturbance on the Conrail right away.
It's still you're still adding a cut to the grade in that area, correct?
Correct.
Would there be any reason not to, as a condition in the future, to have Conrail review it?
No.
Well, I would object to that being conditioned. That's not a planning board issue.
Well, I'm trying to have the public confident that this grading and the cutting of the ground in that area isn't going to impact the railroad operation. And I don't know any other way to do it without getting Conrail input.
For work being done on our property,
Correct.
I'm not sure what legal right they would have to preclude any sort of development on our property that's not within the right-of-way and that they don't have an easement over.
Our concern is because you're changing the grade below the elevation of the rail bed.
Okay?
So you would not agree to a condition to have the plan submitted to Conrail?
Have a plan submitted to Conrail? We can provide them a copy of the plan, yes, but I'm not sure we're not giving them any more rights than what they already have.
I'm not a geotechnical engineer, but I can't imagine that you could, even if it's on your property, you couldn't just arbitrarily excavate a 100-foot deep pit up against the property line, not and expect Conrail to be concerned with the structural impact to the rail bed. So again, I think it would be appropriate for Conrail to review and comment.
If the board wants to make that a condition, they can make that a condition, but I would object to it because there's no legal right to that.
Yeah, our grade differential there is only about 10 feet, and right now our limit of disturbance, even at the top of that slope where we get back to existing grade, is 15 feet from the property line, and the remaining trailer parking that's, still proposed is about 75 feet from the property line.
Mr. Ford, would your office be able to issue an opinion concerning the stability of that slope and any potential impact on the Conrail rail bed?
That would be something that a geotechnical engineer in our office could provide an opinion on.
So you would agree to have a geotechnical engineer?
I
offer an
don't think
opinion?
it's for me to agree.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Engineers, we could do anything,
So I'm asking, is if your client's,
engineering-wise.
if your client's not going to get input from Conrail,
Yeah. We've had communication with Conrail back in the summer of 2024, when I think somebody brought up this issue already. They have a consulting engineer. At the time, it was Colliers. We made communication with them. They were pleased that we were removing the trailer parking area in the proximity of the retaining wall, and there really wasn't any concern, when that change was made. So that was, I'll say, another positive aspect of the removal of the 33 trailer parking spaces in that retaining wall close to the.
so is there any reason we couldn't get a letter from Colliers stating that they take no exception to the improvements proposed along their property line?
Well, it'd be Conrail and whoever their representative is, and I defer to our council as to just what that process would be. Again, the site surveys don't include, we're on our property, has been described already. We're not in Conrail. I've just described the changes that reduce the proximity of the improvements to the Conrail right away, and we're not aware of any rights or easement that Conrail has on the applicant's, the application property.
That's
Well,
not, that's
I
not
understand where
answering
you're
my
asking.
question.
We'll get back to you on it, but it's no different than asking one person building a house here and saying, you got to get approval from your neighbor because what you're doing may impact their property. That's not an ask of any other applicant.
Yeah.
But we understand what you're asking us, and we'll respond to that prior to the next meeting.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have right now, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Joyce?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to keep going over the same item, but I just want to make it clear that it was our office, along with Mr. Mayhew's office, our understanding that we had received information from CSX that your prior proposal, they had believed impacted them. And I just want to make this clear and transparent to the public here. And I think Mr. Gianetti's, all due respect, but Mr. Gianetti's, example of comparing it to someone else's property is not really that fair, in that we're dealing with a rail line, and we just want to make sure as the public entity that if a planning board is going to take action to approve some sort of plan, and then that plan is in conflict with another entity like a railroad, we just want some verification that whatever changes that you're making, that it's not going to interfere with them. So it's not really a question, just wanted to build on what Mr. Mayhew was saying and where we're coming from. We want to make sure that whatever's on the plans, that it's not in conflict with the rights of the rail line, and the rail line had communicated to us that your prior plan, they believed did conflict with them, with their rights. So we just want to make sure whatever it is, even though you're proposing to do it on the applicant's property, we just want to make sure it's being done right. So thank you.
Yeah,
I have nothing further.
Yeah, to clarify, and I appreciate, I think the concern at that time was that there was a retaining wall that was holding back earth along the Conrail right-of-way, was in close proximity to the right-of-way, and just how it would be constructed and the geogrid and so on and so forth. And now that that retaining wall is eliminated, and it wasn't, I think, a clear determination that there was going to be an impact. It was proved to us that there won't be an impact, the constructability of that retaining wall, and it would be a construction detail. In this case, that's no longer applicable because that retaining wall is no longer proposed. But what we've described already is going back to Conrail and touching base with them with regards to the current plan.
We'll address that.
We'll address that.
Okay. Thank you. Board members.
I think they answered the whole. So can I just be clear? The reason you removed the parking was to allow this buffer between the property and the railroad? Is that the main reason you got rid of that parking?
Well, no, I understood that there was prior testimony or questions regarding the code compliance of trailer parking with stacked parking.
Okay. So it
So
wasn't.
that was the other reason.
It wasn't driven by the wall.
Well, we didn't have an answer. We didn't have Conrail telling us, no, don't take the wall out, but that was an added plus to making that change.
And I know you don't have the picture back up here, but is it about a 10-foot slope, basically from the top of the right-of-way to what the level of the parking will be? Is that about what we're looking at?
Correct.
Okay. That's all. Thanks.
Objector number 1.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Ford. A couple things just to start off of, and I'm not even sure how to group all of this. But the first time you submitted your October 2023 drainage report to the township was with your August 8th letter? Yeah, August 8th of 2024.
Yes, I believe that's correct.
Okay. So you had that report from October of 2023 to August of 2024 and did not supply that until your August 8th letter to the township, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you talked about a handful of changes that DEP required. One of them was, and we can pull something up if we need to, but in the northwest corner of the site, you had a time of concentration path that was basically a linear line on the top of it, and DEP required you to make that follow the topography, correct?
Yes.
And somewhat similar to what Dr. Emerson had recommended in his testimony, his report.
I think actually factually, DEP did not ask for that. We made that change as part of our review process with DEP to provide in response to the objector's comment. We didn't object to that, and the analysis proved out that the basins as designed and the way they're sized still provided for the required peak flow reductions.
All right.
So that was really trying to not just address DEP comments, but all the comments we've received, including Mr. Mayhew's, and we think the valid comments that Mr. Emerson or Dr. Emerson made. And that was one of them.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
You spent a lot of time talking about the stream and likened it to a grass swale under the BMP manual. At no time did Dr. Emerson or I ever suggest that it be considered a grass swale from a stormwater perspective, did they?
No, I
No.
used that
Okay,
reference
thank you.
because in order for it to qualify as a water quality
No.
aspect, it would have to be.
Mr. Ford, it was just a yes or no question. We didn't suggest it was considered a grass swale. We didn't suggest that it qualified as a BMP under the stormwater regulations, correct?
I understood it would be a water quality feature, and the only way I know to analytically assess whether a water quality feature meets the regulations or not is with those DEP standards, and that's why I referenced
But
that. But
there
I
was-
don't recall, I watched the tape, but I don't recall whether that was referenced as part of Dr. Emerson's testimony or not. I don't know.
You've never heard of DEP classifying as a stream as a grass swale for water quality perspectives?
I haven't
Okay.
heard of DEP classifying a stream as a water quality feature
Okay.
either.
All right. You also indicated, let me ask this. Under the stormwater rules, the 80% TSS removal is a removal of the increase of sediment that comes off a site post-development, correct?
It's a water quality treatment standard.
Yeah, right. But you are removing 80% of the increase from the natural condition. So you take the natural condition, you do your development, you figure out, you have your BMP, and you remove 80% of that increase, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so do you know how much TSS runs off that site into the stream or the drainage ditch currently?
No, I don't know
Okay. Thank you. Did you ever calculate how much TSS is going to run off, I think it's warehouse 1, and into the stream even with the 80% TSS removal?
There is no standard that would require us to make that
Okay.
analysis, so I don't recall that it would have been in any of our reports.
All right. So you don't know what's going in there now, and you don't know what would be going in after the fact? That would be inaccurate.
That's not part of the analysis.
Okay.
That's correct.
All right, thank you. And then I apologize, 'cause I'm not sure I 100% heard you or understood. With warehouse 2, you have infiltration basin, I think it's 1 and 5. And did I understand correctly, and I apologize if I didn't, DEP is not allowing you to use those as recharge?
That's not part of our qualifying to meet recharge. That's correct.
Okay. Those things still exist?
That's correct.
Okay. And DEP did require you to add a subsurface infiltration basin for building 1?
Yes, part of the DEP review process was in Chapter 12, there's an allowance for using alternate
Okay.
permeability. I'm trying to answer your question.
Well, no, the question was, DEP require you to add a basin? I don't necessarily
the
want to know at this moment why. They just required you to add a basin.
The end result was that we stopped arguing with DEP about the alternate test method using the pit bale test and acquiesced to leaving those 2 basins in and adding another one by building 1. Yes.
All right.
So that was part of our DEP
Right.
permit approval.
So before this process with DEP, what was it? You had 3 basins and you added one for 4.
No, before DEP process, we had 5 basins. We added one and made it 6, and 2 of them, we are not technically having credit for
No,
the recharge.
I
Yes.
apologize. I worded a question poorly. So for warehouse 1, you had 3 subsurface infiltration basins, and DEP asked you.
Part of our approval we added a 4th one.
Fourth
Yes,
one
that was
for-
part of my testimony.
For warehouse 1.
Correct.
Okay. And for none of these infiltration basins, have you designed a insulating barrier from the bottom of the basin to the ground surface, correct? That's something that you would do after the fact?
The plans include notes regarding the fill material below the subsurface infiltration basins, and the subsurface small-scale subsurface infiltration basins are, again, similar to the mechanical treatment devices where they use those manufactured arches to provide for the storage, so it's a unit that's supplied by a supplier like Coltech or ADS. And again, similar to my prior testimony is regarding, at the time of construction, there's shop drawing submittals submitted. Alternatives, materials might be available if and when at that time it's being constructed. And those additional means and methods for construction would be provided.
Okay. But my question to you was, and let me rephrase it, at your September 2023 hearing, you testified that you could design a barrier from the bottom of the subsurface infiltration basin to the ground to prevent that infiltration from leaking out into the remaining portions of the retaining wall.
It wouldn't be a barrier at the bottom. If anything, it would be a liner on the side of the subsurface, small-scale subsurface infiltration basin, coincident with the retaining wall.
But you haven't designed that?
No.
No, okay.
No.
You're still intending to do that, but you just haven't designed.
That's a mechanism that could be implemented to provide additional comfort that there's not going to be any lateral movement of groundwater, and it would go down below the basins, and these subsurface infiltration, small-scale subsurface infiltration basins have material below them that's very permeable, which would be indicative of the water traveling down, not sideways.
Okay.
But again, yes, that was part of my prior testimony.
All right. And we also, going back to the grass soil, and I apologize for jumping around a little bit, and I believe you testified to this back in June or September of 2023. You're not a wetlands expert, and you did not do the delineation of the wetlands in this instance, correct?
I'm not a wetland expert, but the wetland mapping was done by our office as well in concert with Mr. Cook.
Okay, but you did not do that?
Personally, no.
No, okay, thank you. And, okay, so this is two separate lots, correct?
Correct.
And each building has their own stormwater BMP system, correct?
Correct.
And in post-construction, is it 3 different drainage areas you are proposing?
Well, there's one point of analysis where the Royce Brook leaves the site along the northerly track boundary.
You know what, if you wouldn't mind, again, I can pull it up if you want, but I think your colorized drawing may suffice.
I don't have control of it. Yeah.
Yep, A13. So, okay, so on warehouse 2, you have 2 green lines running, well, let me rephrase that. You have a wet pond in the southern portion and a green line referencing the drainage pipe to the stream, correct?
Correct.
Then you have one just in the corner of the building, again, on the southerly, southeastern side. Again, I'm presuming that is coming from the porous pavement
Right
going
here?
to the stream. Correct.
No, that's a sanitary sewer
Oh, okay.
lateral connection.
My apologies. But do you have another drainage pipe to the Royce Brook in the northern portion?
Correct.
Okay.
These are all on site.
All right. And for building 1, you basically have one discharge point to the Royce Brook.
Correct.
So you have at least one tributary to the Royce Brook receiving discharge. And then the Royce Brook, its main portion is getting 2. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay. And I apologize, but lot 32, you're not doing any recharge on lot 32.
As part of the overall site design, there is recharge at building number 2, but again, it's not being taken credit for or granted credit, acknowledge that with regards to the recharge, correct?
All the recharge is happening on lot 33.
Correct.
And did you likewise heavy load water quality treatment on one lot versus the other? Or is the water quality being met on both lots?
Water quality is being met by virtue of the porous pavement or mechanical treatment devices, and that's specific to the motor vehicle surfaces that drain to those facilities. So it's not analyzed in a sense where it's right at the inlet.
But each lot is getting water quality treatment.
Correct.
All right.
Well, it's not a lot, it's the motor vehicle surfaces.
And quantity reductions are also happening. You're reducing the water quality, apologize. You're reducing the water quantity or the rate reductions on each site. You're not front-loading reductions on one site versus the other. So you're not doing more than required necessarily on one site, so you could do less on the other.
You know, there was no intention to do something like you're characterizing,
Okay.
and this is an overall site. You're seem to question it as if it's two different projects. It may be two separate lots, but it's reviewed and analyzed in totality.
But there are 3 different drainage areas, I believe, post-construction, correct?
No, there's one point of analysis, which is our.
My question is, what are the drainage areas? So
Well, there's multiple drainage areas. Well,
Okay.
there's drainage areas to each basin. There's drainage areas to each catch basin or inlet on the site. So there's,
But overall, so on your plans, you don't have drainage area 1, drainage area 2, 2A, and 3.
well, you just described what I just said is that there's drainage areas for the 3 basins. That's the way they're analyzed. And then they're merged for an impact. Yes.
Actually, I think that is all the questions I have. Thank you, Mr. Ford.
Perfect. 2 minutes to spare.
Oh, you know what? I apologize.
Spoke
Sorry.
too soon.
Okay.
Talking about, going back to the drainages, and I again apologize for jumping all over. You heard and spoke with Mr. Cook, and you heard his testimony.
Yes.
And he testified, whether it may be hearsay or not, that he spoke with the property owner, and the property owner is the one who dug that ditch. Do you remember that testimony?
You're getting into details. I believe that's correct.
Okay.
I don't know.
Do you know when the property owner took possession of the property?
No.
So if it was, I told you in 1989, you wouldn't know one way or the other.
Yeah,
Okay.
haven't made a judgment of how the origin of that ditch.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, minutes to spare. So I think we have some housekeeping to continue.
Housekeeping is the next hearing.
Wow.
I think at the last meeting, we spoke about March 6th.
We currently have March 13th available.
Just checking right now.
Objectors will be available. Mr. Ford will be available.
He would be available. I would just ask, these plans have been submitted in August, and then the one removing the stacked trailers in November. If we can have if the board engineer is going to do another review letter, if we could have it well in advance of that March 13th hearing, so I don't have to call back Mr. Ford again to address anything in a review letter
As to that issue.
as to, Have him come back just to address the review letter.
Mr. Mayu, I believe, is going to be doing a more comprehensive overall letter. You, however, are asking for a review letter of Mr. Ford's paperwork that he has testified to this evening.
Well,
In
and what
adva-
was submitted, the revised plans, everything.
In advance to the March 13th.
Correct.
Mr. Mayu?
We will strive for that.
I think it's only fair. We need to respond. If there's going to be questions, he's here to testify. I don't want to have to bring him back for a fourth or fifth time after he's already
We're
testified.
talking about Mr. Ford's exhibits and Mr. Ford's testimony only. As it
Or if
relates-
there's anything, I mean, there's been a lot of testimony since his August 10th, 2023 letter.
And I am sure that Mr. Mayu will at some point address all of that in his overall letter to the client. I'm trying to get you the letter you want and limit it to the extent that Mr. Mayu is going to tell me, I assume, or tell the board, that he's not going to be able to do a full-blown overall letter between now and March.
Well, I guess
Fill in the blank.
anything engineering-wise he has a question or concern about, we would like it before the next meeting so we can address it.
We will have another review letter before the next meeting.
Great.
Doesn't mean you won't have to bring him back again. So, March 13th,
We need an extension of time of decision.
by the way, Mr. Giannetti, is Mr. Dean going to be available on the 13th?
I know he's available on March 6th.
Yeah.
I'll have to check on the 13th.
All right, the point is, can I suggest we do a time of decision to the end of April, and let's stop dealing with this 1 month at a time? On the hope that maybe, because I hear rumors.
Is there
that's when
another-
the supposed story-
Is there
That's when the supposed thing will be over.
Is there a date after the 13th? Like, if we can get a second date after the 13th, I'm willing to give an extension to that second date.
Do you want to do this one? I'll just double check.
We have April 10th on the board.
Question. April 10th. What was that date?
I think
April
I'm,
10th.
I think I'm away that day. That's our spring
See what
break.
happens. Just sit quietly, Robert.
After that, we have May 1st.
Yeah, wonderful. Got it?
April.
Nay,
So
April
the
30th.
potential for April 3rd, it's just my only concern. Okay, yeah, March 13th and then April 3rd potentially. But is that not enough time in case there's things that come up?
Is
Well,
there
I'd
a
like
bit-
to keep that April 3rd date, and then if we have to change it on March 13th, we can change it on March 13th.
Would the board like to hold that?
Yeah, let's
Okay.
get this to the finish line.
March 13th, next date, April 30th, time of decision, Mr. Giannetti?
I think it was April 3rd.
No, I'm asking time of decision.
Oh, no, I thought when you were saying the second date, I thought you said April
No,
30th.
I'm only saying one date.
Okay. March 3rd. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, it's a motion to extend this to continue this hearing without further notice to Thursday, March 13th, 2025 at 7 p.m. or as soon thereafter as the matter may be heard, and the time of the decision rule extended through April 30th, 2025.
That, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Can we do by affirmation, or we gotta do roll call?
Roll call. It's a short roll call.
Yeah, roll call, please.
Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Committeeman Lapani.
Yes.
Mayor Chicarelli.
Yes.
Chair Sarachi.
Yes.
If I may just ask a housekeeping question, just so I am
Mr. Chairman,
prepared.
unless there's anything else on the agenda, I would ask that the board go into executive session.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
who's he?
I just wanted to get clarification. Obviously, Mr. Ford will be coming back at the next hearing. What other rebuttal experts does Mr. Giannetti expect or
Mr.
intend?
Giannetti, correct me if I'm wrong, the other rebuttal witness you're planning on calling is Mr. Dean, is that correct?
Correct.
And
No
and will
one-
there be a supplemental report?
Maybe, maybe not. Yes, Mr. Dean we will be submitting more information from Mr. Dean.
In the usual 10 days in advance of the hearing. Which goes to the next issue. If you all plan on coming back with testimony, rebuttal, the same rules apply. Experts.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Mr. Chairman, if we're available for the conference room, I would ask that the members of the board who were involved in the Harvard Way application, along with Mr. Mayu, Ms. Ball, and Mr. Coyce, he thought for a split second he'd be excused, but no. Attend, Mr. Smith is excused, Mr. Ciccarelli is excused. So be the four people on this side, because Mr. Ciccarelli was excused from the original application, and Mr. Smith has not reviewed any of this, so he gets to go home.
all right. So do we need to do a resolution to go in executive session?
We already, what,
Did we already do a resolution?
for what, time of decision?
No, to go to
No,
executive
to go in
session.
executive session.
I'll do it.
Because usually,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm asking that the Hillsborough Township Planning Board, pursuant to NJSA 10:4-6 et sec, most notably NJSA 10:4-12B8, B7, attorney-client privilege and pending or anticipated litigation, in this case, Harvard Way JMJ4 LLC. Formal action may or may not be taken at the conclusion of the executive session. We will recommence here.
okay. Is there a motion to go in executive?
So moved.
Can we do all in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All
Okay,
right,
we'll
we're
be
going
back.
executive.
Thank you all.